Hello and welcome to Knitting on the Float. My name is Tracy and I'm your host. I am coming to you from one of those days, it's hard to describe. There's a little bit of gray, there's a tiny bit of blue in the sky. It's a nice enough day in the Vancouver area. Wherever you are, I hope that you have had a fantastic day or you are having a fantastic day and that you are ready to sit down, relax, work on your project of choice while I share with you what I have been up to for the past little while, because it's been a while since we had a little visit together. So I have a full couch and I am excited to start sharing what I've been up to. But before I do that, let me let you know where you can find me. I am Tracy RR on Ravelry and I am at Knitting on the Float on Instagram. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. This is a podcast where I primarily talk about knitting, and this week it's mainly about knitting, but there's a little bit of a variation in there as well. Welcome, and I hope that you enjoy what I'm going to share with you. And if you are a returning viewer, welcome back. I know you have patiently waited for quite a while because of course we've been vlogging throughout December, and then I did take a few weeks break in January. So we are back to some knitting and crafting on the float. So welcome back. I know you have grabbed a nice comfy spot on either the couch beside Scout and I or one of the red chairs, and you are ready to sit down, do some crafting, enjoy a nice beverage, whatever it is you are drinking, and you are ready to just have some relaxation time. So it is that time, and it is now time for some tea time since I've got my lovely little cup in hand. And this is my cute little mouse, country mice is what this one is called. I just call this my Make-A-Wish mug. And today I am drinking one of my standalone bags. This was in a package that was sent by Jules Hill of So Sweet Violet, and this is the organic berry burst infusion. I have to turn and look at it, and it turns this beautiful rosy color. It smells like berries, and I think is a really great way to start off the first podcast of 2023. So let us cheer to the year ahead. May you be happy and healthy as we go through 2023. Cheers. I didn't steep my tea very long, but it really does have a nice strong berry taste, so yum. And now we are ready to start chattering about all of the crafts that I've been working on the past little while. So some of these were worked on in December, some of them have been worked on in January, and some of them you've seen before, some of them you have not. So let us start off with something you haven't seen and something I've been meaning to work on for quite some time. Back in 2018, I bought a circular sock knitting machine, so a CSM, and that was from Earl Bacher. And I've had it for quite some time. I was pretty good at cranking out tubes, and then I would take the tube and I would add my own cuff, cut out a spot, add the heel, and then add in the toe. But that takes quite a bit of time. And when the machine is designed to do cuffs, heels, and toes, as well as the leg and the foot, you want to take advantage of that. So I've been doing some practicing on my circular sock machine, and I've been doing a little bit of learning as well. Before we moved to Vancouver from Toronto, so over a year ago, I did order the table, and I have to tell you, that table is a game changer. Before that, I had it on a very low table, and I had to sit quite low, and it just really was not an ideal situation. Plus, it was in a room that was a little bit darker, and in this space, it is so much better because it is lighter. So last week, I finally opened the package that arrived in Toronto, and when we did our move, I just kept it in the package because it made a lot more sense to move the box as is. And I had ordered it just before we found out we were going to move to Vancouver. So I had left it in the box for well over a year, probably a year and a half. And a year and a half? Yeah, a year and a half. Anyway, so I finally got it out of the box, set the table up, put my circular sock machine on it, and it's wonderful. So definitely, if you are ever thinking about getting the Erlbacher, get the table too. Should have just done it in the first place. Anyway, so I have been working on a few different things. I've been working on heels and I've been working on folded cuffs. So I'll start off, and I also wanted to make a new cast-on bonnet because my old cast-on bonnet was getting a little bit run ragged. So I made a cast-on bonnet, and the cast-on bonnet you just basically hook around the cylinder, and then you start cranking with your waste yarn, and that starts off your sock. So I did a beautiful cast-on bonnet with some turtle pearl yarn leftovers. This is, I think it was called Superman, but now I think it's called Superhero. They've renamed it. But I have to tell you, I am absolutely loving the texture of how the turtle pearl is knitting up on the sock machine. And then I did a picot hem. So there's the inside of what the folded cuff looks like. And then when you do the picots, you then pull out a little strand, and then you have little loops that you can hang on the cylinder of your circular sock machine. So this is a 64 stitch cylinder and bonnet, or bonnet for a 64 stitch cylinder. So I did that, and then I just cinched it off at the bottom, and that made me feel a little bit more confident. And then I started working on heels, and what I would do is I would just basically do one, pull out my yarn, do one, pull out my yarn. And I did some really awful ones. Pull out my yarn, wrap it back up, start again. So this one was one of my first more successful heels. There are a couple of holes there, and I may have gone in a little bit too much. I lost count when I was doing the heel. So it's a very pointy heel, and again, just a tester done in the turtle pearl. And oh, as I said, this fabric feels so great. So I worked away. I have one sock, just one sock, more just to show myself that I could do it. And so this sock has the folded cuff, no picots, just a folded cuff. And then I did a fairly successful heel, and not too pointy, perhaps a little bit wonky, but again, just to practice. And then I kept cranking down the foot, and then did a toe. Now the big difference with the circular sock machine toe and a hand knitted toe is that you have to do your Kitchener at the top. So you have basically many more stitches than you would if you were just doing your Kitchener at this point here. Plus you then get a little bit of a seam here, kind of like commercial socks. So still working on that. My Kitchener wasn't fantastic, but for a first sock, I was pretty pleased. I think I do need to tighten up the gauge of this one. This is a Nora George Yarns leftover, and I just need to, I think, tighten up the gauge a little bit for different socks. So the tension just needs to be worked on that. So I am currently waiting for some heel weights to come in the mail. And I have to tell you, if you ever deal with Erlbacher, their customer service is amazing, just amazing. So I was really quite impressed. Takes me a long time to get the box out of the original package, but I've always found when I have ordered from them different things, I've been very, very pleased. So I now have a 72-inch cylinder that I bought in the summertime, and I actually had that sent down to Isaac when he was in Florida. So I've got a 64 stitch and a 72 stitch cylinder so I can make some bigger socks, and my goal is this year to start cranking out some socks and working down some of my sock yarn stash because I have a lot of it, and just I love, have I mentioned this yet, how the turtle pearl has knit up. So I do have quite a bit of turtle pearl. I was very tempted the other day by their sale, but at this point I have quite a bit of yarn. Once I get through that, then I can order more turtle pearl. But in the meantime, oh, so happy with that. So that was one thing that I have been working on, and I'm hoping that once my heel weights, because that's where I have the issue with the dropping stitches, the heel weights are actually quite important. So once I have those, I'm going to pull the machine out again and really start working on my circular sock machine sock knitting game. So looking forward to that. So project 1.5, 2, 3, 4, whatever you want to call that, that was what I worked on. So something exciting to look forward to as well as I continue to learn how to use my machine moving forward through 2023. The next project that I'm going to share with you is living in my gorgeous Bird Leg Bags Nancy Drew bag. And when I pull out Nancy Drew, it is pretty much always a test knit, and it's usually a fairly secret test knit. So the project in here does need to remain secret for a little bit longer, hopefully not too much longer, but mine is now fully complete. Before I only had it half complete. And I'm going to share the yarn that I have done this project with. So it is a Viola sock, piece of string out of the way. And if you are on Emily, who is the Dyer of Viola Yarns newsletter, you'll have found out earlier this week that Emily is going to retire from dyeing yarn, which is definitely very sad for the knitting community because Emily's yarns are so beautiful. She's going to have a big update, and then I think she's just going to be dyeing till the yarn stores that she has are done, and then that will be, unfortunately, the last of Viola yarns. Thankfully, I have a very healthy Viola stash, but Emily's yarns are always so beautiful, as is this gorgeous skein of dapple. And if you've been with me for a while, you know I don't love the color yellow. I love it in highlights and pops, like a yellow rain jacket is fabulous, but if I were to paint my walls yellow, I would want to move out pretty much the day after I finish painting it, so I get really restless with yellow, and oftentimes I find knitting with yellow can be a bit challenging because I just want the needles like clear of the yarn. I don't know what it is. I said, I guess before, yellow makes me restless. So anyway, this was a beautiful yellow. However, it did take me a while to complete. So not sure whether that was just because other things happened or whether what was because I was using yellow. I don't know which one. Anyway, yellow's not bad, just not my favorite color. Anyway, this is Beautiful Dapple by Emily of Viola Yarns. There's little bits of pink in there. And I'm gonna pop it back in here, and hopefully soon I will be able to share the project that had been living in this bag. It's partially blocking right now, so half blocked here, the other half is blocking. That's a big hint there. I think I've shared what they are in a previous episode, but anyway, when they are released, I will be very excited to share that with you. The next project that I'm going to share with you is in a very fancy project bag. Not really, I just haven't gone upstairs and picked one out yet. So I'm just using a Ziploc bag, and I do need to go up and get a proper project bag. For this, I'm using some very special yarn, and in fact, I think I'll pop my glasses on so I can read what it says. So this is beautiful Cory Confetti by La Bien-Aimée, and Cory Confetti is a one-of-a-kind limited edition yarn comprised of a mix of recycled natural fibers that include upcycled La Bien-Aimée yarn and custom dyed Falkland Corriedale. So this is 50% Falkland Cory, 30% natural recycled fibers, and 20% La Bien-Aimée recycled threads. And this skein actually has a little bit of a sparkly bit right just under my finger there. But this has been really lovely yarn to work with. And I started this project a few days ago. This is gray bow, so it's often very gray in the Vancouver area, but these little pops of color are bringing a lot of happiness. So this is a test knit that I am doing for Amy, who is, let's see, Tailoress Studios. Now I always want to call Amy Little Tailoress because that had been her previous name, but so she's been Little Tailoress, she's now Tailoress Studios, and Amy is the dyer of Dandelion and Dogwood along with her sister. I think her sister's name is Jen. So I am working on a beautiful test knit, which is, for me, a little bit of a challenge. It is a sweater. And I've done a couple of sweaters as tests before, but sweater knitting is not something I usually do. I'm mainly socks, shawls, but I do like to knit sweaters. They just take me a lot longer. So I was very good when I was prepping. I did a gauge swatch of the stockinette and got gauge with the suggested needle, so that was fabulous. I was originally going to do this pattern in a different color altogether, some Cascade 220, but I didn't have quite enough yarn and I didn't want to play yarn chicken, and but I had done gauge swatches with the yarn I had hoped to use as well, and did a few swatches and did fairly well. And not only did I do a stockinette gauge swatch, I have also been a very good girl and have done a ribbing gauge swatch too. So yay for me. And you know what? They look so, it makes me want to put them together and make a blanket. At this point, it would be a very small blanket, but can you imagine just putting all of your swatches together and making a fun blanket? I think that would be a great idea. Anyway, that is something that I have done in preparation for this project. And I cast it on a few days ago. I made a really silly error when I was prepping my pattern. I go through and I highlight the sizes, and I highlighted the wrong spot. So I did a little section where I've done something wrong, but it was I think a fairly easy workaround. So this is my sweater so far, and this is a test knit for the Arconia sweater, which Amy will be releasing on the 14th of February. So let me actually grab the pattern, and I do have that is what the sweater will look like. So there's cute little Amy, and so this is the Arconia sweater by Amy Loudon, and I believe, as I said, that is going to be released on February 14th. So mine is slowly coming along. As I said, I did have a little bit of an error, fully my counting error, but I'm getting a fairly good start. I'm knitting the size 4, and there it's supposed to have a little bit of ease on it, so I think it'll be good. So loving how I'm strangling myself now. These things are great. These are the barber cords. Don't strangle yourself with them, but they are great. I am loving how the Cory confetti is knitting up, and definitely lots of fun knitting these pops of colors as we go through the January blahs. Anyway, that is something I've been working on, and I definitely need to get a better project bag than the Ziploc bag I had kept my yarn in. Maybe I will go up and do that after I finish recording the podcast. So hopefully next week I'll have a proper bag for that one. I think I can take my glasses off now. So that's the Arconia sweater, and I think that is going to be really beautiful once it is all knit up. Moving on to the next project. This one is living in my fun little bobbins bag. This one has the gorgeous Hannah Dale Rendale Designs fabric on it. And look at that cute little owls. Love them. And for this project, this is a test knit that I'm still working on, but I have done the part that I needed to test knit. So this is going to be a very long-term project. This is the Goose Eggs quilt pattern by Danielle George, who is Little Bobbins. And I'm going to be making 9 blocks for my project. And I'm going to be using as my main colors this Nora George yarns, and this is upside down. This is Cobalt, and this is on single sock. And this was a color that Tracy custom dyed for me. So a beautiful rich blue. And I'm also using this gorgeous Arundel, and this is also a singles, but if you take a really good look, I'm hoping you can see that there is some stellina in here. So sparkly, and Arundel from Frozen, so of course light blue icy with some sparkle is perfect. So these are the 2 colors, and I will be alternating each block with these colors. So my first block I knit with the Cobalt, and I'm going to do 9 blocks in a checkerboard fashion. So the first block is Cobalt, second will be the Arundel, third block Cobalt, the next row down Arundel, in the center Cobalt, and then Arundel, and then at the bottom Cobalt, Arundel, Cobalt, mixed with several different La Bien-Aimée singles. So I've got lots of pinks and purples and peachy sort of colors, and this is all for the Goose Eggs quilt. And Danny, who is Little Bobbins, designed this very interesting construction and a really neat block. Now it's based on, you can either call it, I think, the Flying Dutchman block, or it's also called the Flying Geese pattern block. And I have to re-block this because I used my pegs and it didn't block out as nicely. So I really need to use wires. So, because my corners are a little bit wonky. So this has been blocked, but I think it definitely could be blocked a lot better. And Danny has done a 3-color version. I've chosen to do a 2-color version. So as I mentioned, I'm going to use the Cobalt and the Arundel as the main colors. And then for the big triangles, I'm going to be switching out all of the different sort of pinky and purpley, peachy La Bien-Aimée singles skeins. And this took almost a full skein of La Pêche Mignon, which is the La Bien-Aimée. And I still have about 20 something grams left of the dark blue, which is good because I need to do 5 blocks. So I will have enough yarn to do 5 blocks with the Cobalt, and then I'll do 4 blocks with the Arundel. The sun is coming out, which is lovely. Anyway, this is the Goose Eggs quilt, my block 1. As I mentioned, I've done it with 2 colors. Danny's has 1 color here and another color here, and then her main color. So I just wanted to do something a little bit different and went with the 2 color version. So as I mentioned, I do need to reblock this because the blocking didn't turn out the way I liked it. I had to take over the kitchen counter, so I was in a bit of a rush trying to get it all done. And again, the great thing about knitting, you can always reblock if you need to, and this one, it definitely needs it. My plan, my hope and dream, we'll see how it goes, is to do 1 block a month so that by September I will be able to sew the whole blanket up. I should probably, I'm not putting all of my goose eggs in one basket. Well, maybe I am, but I'm going to try and be a little bit realistic on that. But I would like to, if I can, do 1 square a month. So the next square will be with the Arundel, and this one's kind of come apart a little bit. And this one is Amy's shawl. So Amy's shawl and Arundel will be going together. Well, I've already got my skein ready to be wound, so you know that's a plus. I better wrap that up a little bit better, or else there will be a mess in this bag. Anyway, I do have a very large bag here that, not as tight as it should be, that will hold this project, hopefully. And my plan is over the next little while to add block by block. And at the end of September, October, November, December, have a goose eggs quilt. I'm hoping to have all of the blocks done by September, and then I'm going to do an I-cord edging all the way around. So I think December is fairly reasonable. We'll see how I do. Anyway, that is what is living in my gorgeous Little Bobbins Rendale Designs bag. The owls are all knowing. They know I'm taking on a big challenge. I realized that I had been sitting on one of my project bags. Oops, I had hoped to share it a little bit earlier, but I'm going to share it now. This project has been living in this gorgeous London bag. This was made for me by my friend Christine. And inside, the yarn is Trailing Clouds in the Mind the Gap colorway. So I cast this on while I was in London, and I have 1 completed sock. I can't remember if I was fully complete the last time I shared this with you or not. And let's see if I can remember the colorways. So I believe the turquoise is Waterloo and City. And then we have the Overground, the Metropolitan. The black one is the Northern Line. The green one is District. Pink is Hammersmith and City. The brown is the Bakerloo. Yellow is Circle. Red is Central. This gray, silver is Jubilee. Then we have the lighter blue is Victoria. The Piccadilly is the darker blue, and then we are back to Waterloo and City. So I believe I remembered them all. I hope so. Anyway, this is just a plain vanilla sock. I've done a 2x2 rib on my cuff, and then plain stockinette. I've done a slip stitch heel flap and a square heel turn. And then I have done a barn toe, so a rounded toe. So that is 1 sock done, and I have made a very good start on my 2nd sock. So I'm just doing 64 stitches and working away, and then I am planning to have these be a perfect match. When I was in England in 2016, I also cast on a pair of the Mind the Gap socks, and I did them so that the colors went the other way. So it was up and down the tube. These ones, I just want a perfect match. And I had done a much bigger stitch count on my previous pair. So these ones will fit me probably a little bit bigger. They'll be a little more snug, which will be good. So that is something that I continue to work on, and it's nice to sort of take out with me and work on the rounds. I'm getting very close to starting the heel flap and then into the heel turn and gusset, and that of course always takes me a little bit more concentration. Anyway, good thing to take this out from being sat on, because 2.25 needles in the tushy, not so comfortable. Anyway, that is something that continues to be worked on, and I hope to finish in the next little while. The final project that I'm going to share with you has been on the needles since March, or had been on the needles since March. It is now fully complete. In fact, for the most part, most of the parts of this project were off the needles quite a while ago. This is my Macaulay cardigan, and the Macaulay cardigan is a pattern by Katie Green, who is Katie Green Bean, and it has been living in my bird leg bags treehouse bag with this beautiful pull. And for this project, I used a limited edition Blacker yarns. So this is the 12th birthday brushwork yarn, and I used this color, which was called Stipple. And then I used this color, which was called Wash. So the purple and the gray, light gray. It's more of a gray than an off-white. So, it's more of a grayish off-white. And I was very, very good with this project as well. I swatched. So I did my rib swatches, and I did just a plain stockinette. This one doesn't have a nice border. I don't know, I think I really need to follow up on that idea of knitting my swatches together and putting together a quilt. I have two more that I did in the Cascade when I was working on the Arconia sweater. So maybe something, as I continue to up my game with sweaters, maybe I'll just save all my swatches and put them together in a quilt. So the Macaulay cardigan, I have had my eye on for a while. I've had the yarn for it for a while. This was actually designed for the brushwork yarns. And I am now fully complete. So I had this is a pieced sweater. I had all the pieces done for quite some time. And then in December, I think I put it on Vlogmas, I blocked all the pieces. And then in early January, I learned how to do mattress stitch. So that was very exciting, learning how to do that. And I think I did a pretty good job with my mattress stitch. Let me find where the seam is. Right there, look at that. I lined up my seams really, really well. I used some clips that I had. I think they were just some, I don't know where I got them from, but they were little clips that you put on, and then as I was working on, especially on the shoulder, I had to stretch some bits out, and I'm really pleased with how my mattress stitching for the first time turned out. And finishing was really quite simple, and I'm really pleased with the fact that my button bands line up, and not only have I sewn it together and put button bands and a collar on it, the buttons are on it, and I have put my labels on it too. So this is my Macaulay cardigan, and in the wash and the stipple main, and then wash as the other color. It's washing out with the light coming through right now, but I have, as I mentioned, put my name tag on. I just sewed it on with some regular thread, And I like to put a tag in the back of the neck, but I also like to put a tag on the bottom here. So I've got one of my grain deep, both of these are grain deep tags, but I've put my little sheep, and then on this side here it says made by Tracy, because it's special, it's made by me. Anyway, as I mentioned, I lined up my seams, I think, really well, and then I have chosen out and sewn on my buttons. So I've had these buttons for a while. I have one more button, and I think I'm going to put it on the inside here with a little section where I have, here's my extra button, and I think I'm just, you know, like you find in like a nice shirt, just popping it on the inside in case I lose a button. And I only had one extra, so it's kind of a fun little touch. I just haven't done it yet. Anyway, that is my Macaulay cardigan, and I am absolutely thrilled with how it's turned out. My sleeves are a tiny bit long for my arms, but you know what? I can easily roll them up. And I have to say, this yarn is cozy, super warm. I do need to do a quick steam block of my button bands. I did, and my collar. I did not steam block it once I finished. So once I get myself, I guess, a little bit more organized, I will take it upstairs, put some water in the steam iron, and steam this properly. So as I mentioned, I do need to roll up the sleeves a little bit, which is a shame because I do have that gorgeous little detail, but for now, it's fine. And so for my Macaulay cardigan, here is the detail around the hem, and then of course I have this gorgeous button detail. I did debate whether to put ribbon on the inside, but this is a nice fabric that's been created by the brushwork that I decided it was strong enough to, it's not too floppy. Although, as I mentioned, I do need to give this a slight steam. So that is my Macaulay cardigan. Let me just pop out behind, and then maybe you can see it a little bit better. I'll put my glasses on so I can see what you see. It's always a little bit challenging sharing sweaters on the podcast, but yeah, the cardigan is really quite lovely, and love the colors. The fabric that I've created is really nice, and there's my little tag just right there. And yes, I have a Macaulay cardigan that is off the needles before the year is up, which is pretty amazing. I believe I started this on March 1st last year, so the fact that I have this done before March 1st, 2023 is pretty great. Now, one thing that I did find with the mattress stitch, and this was recommended in the pattern, was to use a strong sock yarn rather than the yarn used for the pattern. So I have used, you can just see a little bit, some beautiful leftovers that were kind of a variegated pink and purple, and I've just got little stitches as I sewed in my ends, but for the most part they all disappear behind here with the mattress stitch. But look at that. So pleased with myself. Anyway, that is all I have to share on my favorite things, and it was a lot. But it's been a while since we sat down and had a proper sit-down knitting podcast. So I'm glad I have quite a thing. I'm glad I had quite a few things to share with you. It's now time for Bits and Bobs, and this is my segment where I talk about anything and everything not necessarily knitting related. And I did mention that I am expecting a package, so no brown paper packages this week, but hopefully next week my little package from Erlbacher will be coming in, and it's probably going to be a lot more exciting to me than it will be to you because they're just weights, but as I mentioned, I am so impressed by Erlbacher's customer service. So I'm excited to share those with you, not only because I will then have them in hand and can really up my sock knitting machine game, but I'm just excited to get them. Anyway, it has been a lovely January so far, and December was also a very lovely month. And if you had a chance to spend some of it with me on Vlogmas, thank you for joining me. I enjoyed reading your comments, and it was a lot of fun doing Vlogmas, although I was getting a little bit tired near the end of Vlogmas and was happy to have a little bit of a break. So I've taken that break. I've done lots of crafting in the meantime. I've done some straightening and fixing up of some of the things around here as well. So it has been a nice, quiet start to the new year. We have had a nice start to January. It's been a fairly quiet January. I have done some crafting, as you've seen, but I've also done a little bit of changing things around in the house. I put up a new towel hanger rack thing. It's got like chalkboard and wood and some hangers on it. We had brought that with us from Toronto, but I hadn't found a good spot for it, but I ended up taking down the towel rack that had been in the upstairs bathroom and put this chalkboard hanger piece, I don't know how to describe it, it's nice, in the boys' bathroom, and it just makes it a little bit easier for them to hang their towels. And then I had a mirror that had been where that had been in their bathroom. I've put it in my bathroom, and I'm actually really happy with how it looks in my bathroom. I did do a little bit of painting in my bathroom. I have not painted out the walls soft chinchilla, but I did paint a little bit of the trim in the semi-gloss in the white. So that has been done. I need to do a little bit of a touch-up from when I pulled off the tape. And I will eventually get to painting the walls in the bathroom blue. So on my plans to do, I know I said I wanted to do it at the beginning of January. I said I wanted to do it in December. I actually said I wanted to do it in October. It will get done when I'm ready. Anyway, just take each day as it comes. This past weekend, we had a fantastic weekend. My sister-in-law and one of my nephews flew out and stayed with us for the weekend. We went to Stanley Park. We also went to a park nearby called the Terra Nova Park. It's basically a big playground for kids. It has a zip line. I may have gotten a little bit of muck on my tushy when I fell off trying to climb up onto the zip line, but it was a lot of fun. It was a bit of a drizzly day, so a little bit of muck, but a little bit of muck hurt no one. We really did have such a lovely weekend with my sister-in-law and my nephew, and when they came to visit, we discovered something called Swoop Airlines, and Swoop is a new carrier in Canada, and they have crazy low airfare prices. So super excited to discover them. It's more expensive to send my luggage than for me to get on the plane, which is kind of crazy, but definitely appreciated, especially if you don't need to bring a whole lot. If you can bring just your personal item, a little bag with a couple changes of clothes in it, you're good. You know, if you're somewhere where you can do your laundry, I'm really excited to fly Swoop in the next few weeks, actually. Nathaniel and I will be flying to Toronto for a little less than a week, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that next week as we get closer to that flight. But really great to know that we've got some options to fly at a more than reasonable cost. So that's coming up, and as I mentioned, we just had the most wonderful weekend with my sister-in-law and my nephew. Did lots of cooking. I made some vegetarian chili, we did pizza, and we did tacos as well. So lots of eating and lots of family time together. I did not take the camera out with me because we just wanted to enjoy our time together, but Stanley Park was fun, as was Terra Nova, even though my tushy did get wet. while I may not have gotten to my painting, I have done a little bit of reorganizing upstairs, and that has also been one of my goals. I still need to tackle my craft area, but I think once the loft area, the family loft area part is a little bit more organized, I'll then be able to really focus on my craft area and straightening that up. So we moved a desk out of Nathaniel's room yesterday and replaced it with a lower table. Looks much nicer in there now, a little bit more space, and Nathaniel still has a place to put his Lego, his ukulele, his light, his books, things like that. And he's got his little chair in there too, so he can sit down and play. It just fits a little bit better in this room. And my plan is to move the desk that had been in Nathaniel's room over so that Greg can use it, and then just arrange things a little bit better so it's a nice sitting area upstairs. And then once I've got that done, hopefully I'll be able to tackle the craft side of the loft, which is right now a complete disaster. So plans, painting, organizing, lots of crafting. Anyway, I think that is all I've got for bits and bobs this week. And oh, I do have one more thing. I have one little snippet from the river, and I'll put that in right here. It is 1 minute to midnight on Wednesday, and we've got the tugboat coming down the river, pulling the, I think it's, I'm trying to remember the name of the wood, the stuff that they put on tabletops. My brain is not thinking. Anyway, here comes the tugboat, and it has, looks like 2 barges full of wood. And usually I get it from the other angle, but tonight I heard the bridge signal that it's about to open, so I thought I would pop out and get it from a different angle. So here comes the Sea Imp, and in a moment one of those other lights is going to come on. I think usually that's what happens, but you can see all of the veneer. That's the type of wood, the veneer. And this actually looks like an even bigger load than usual, but maybe that's just because of where I'm standing right now. So slow and steady down the river, and as I said, it's about midnight, but a very, very large load. Anyway, all the things happening on the Fraser all day, all night. And I guess it's only 2 barges, but they look really super huge. Anyway, there is the Sea Imp. Flag waving. And the bridge is just opening for them as they continue towards the other side. So, 1 barge, 2 barge, and now it's chilly. I'm going inside. When my sister-in-law and nephew were here the other day, one of those big tugboats with the barge came by, and she was able to see it in person. And it really is, you know, it's one thing to catch it on video, but when it's actually going by you, it's really impressive. Earlier today, there was a little boat that was pulling a couple of logs. I guess they had found some logs that they like, and it was really struggling to pull 2 logs down the river. So those tugboats pulling those barges filled with laminate, it's absolutely amazing. And most of the time, I usually catch it when I see the light. It was kind of neat to know that it was coming and catch it from the front of the tugboat. So I hope you enjoyed seeing that from the river. Otherwise, I think that's all I've got for Bits and Bobs this week. Thank you so much for joining me on Knitting on the Float this week. I hope that you have had a chance to sit down, relax, work on that project of choice, and enjoy your beverage while I have chattered away about the things that I have gotten up to the past little while. And it definitely has been a little while because it's been since November that we have done a proper podcast. So glad to start getting back to that routine, although the next little while, things might change a little bit, but for the most part, I'm looking forward to some crafting, some straightening up around the house as well, and just taking things easy as we ease into 2023. I am wishing you the most wonderful week ahead, and I hope that 2023 has been good to you so far. We are a few weeks in now, and I look forward to seeing you next week on Knitting on the Float. Bye. I mentioned the weather at the beginning of the podcast, so a little bit of gray, a little bit of blue, a lot of it of dancing. So it's bright enough for my dancing queen, and it's bright enough for me.